I have no idea how that shit works, Callie. I don't know. That's not my forte. I wish I could see ads like on my own stream. I like big butts and I cannot lie. True. Shake what you got, baby. But anyways, okay. We fucked around enough. Let's get into it, guys. Notes on better sentences. This is huge. This is huge, guys. Better sentences. Let's get into it.
You know how to write a sentence, right? I mean, it's easy.
I once missed the bus from downtown Vancouver, Washington, heading towards the Westfields Mall, and I walked the whole way instead, probably 2 hours to walk it, and I only stopped long enough to buy a soda in a Mexican quick food place. Most people would have waited the hour and a half for another bus. Yeah, Sean, that shit sucks. Yo, this guy's place is creeping me out. What's that behind him? It looks like Freddy Fazbear. Oh, from Five Nights at Freddy's? That kind of looks like Alf. I don't know.
Anybody can do it. But there are levels in mastering the sentence. It's like the difference between knowing how to shoot a basketball and then knowing how to shoot a basketball like Steph Curry. And I really don't care whether you are writing your first book or your 19th book. This 6-step process will elevate your sentence writing. The first step of this process is to look at the sentence before it. Sentences don't exist in isolation.
Oh, whoops.
Isolation. You need sentence variety. So when you look at that previous sentence, you need to figure out whether you're going to pair this sentence with it, meaning echo it in some way, or whether you're going to contrast with it and try to make it as different as possible to create a little more variety. Sentences are really like music, and you have to know what the note.
Walking everywhere in the USA is poop, plus everyone stares at you like that you're insane from their cars or houses. I've never lived in, like, a big city. I've only ever lived in, like, smaller neighborhoods. And I've never really, when I was, like, younger and I was in, like Surrey and shit like that, in Vancouver. You know, I was, like, 11. So it's like I didn't have mobility, I didn't have anything. It's like I never really noticed. In their houses, they look at you with suspicion. In their cars, they're just annoyed you exist. That's brutal. I don't pay attention to fucking anything, so I wouldn't know. I literally either stare at the sky, or I stare at the ground, and I listen to music when I walk. And then I do this to people as they walk by. Because I'm polite. Walking here is like everyone is super friendly and starts conversations out of nowhere. I'm in New York. This town is officially haunted. I mean, this is a good mentality to have. Like, you could stop and have a conversation with anyone here, too. Most people know everyone here. I've just only been here, only 3 years or so, and I don't get out. So the only people know me when I'm, like, in my uniform at Walmart. Plus, everyone is private property, but in the UK... Or everything is private property, but in the UK, you're allowed to walk anywhere except people's gardens. That's fucked up, Eggy. I'd hate to have people continuously walking across your lawn. That's how you ruin a lawn. I'd be pissed. Get off my fucking lawn, you goddamn kids! Grandpa, you're yelling at the wall again. Hey, shut your face! It's Jeffrey. Yeah, you square his head! You can't walk on the lawn, but you can walk across a random field, for example. And the farmer can't tell you off unless you're destroying crops. Oh, I see what you mean, Eggy. I was like, wait, what the fuck? You can just walk on people's lawns? I mean, some people do it, but people consider it a fucking asshole move if there's a sidewalk. Like, that you step on the lawn so that you don't have to step onto the road, or if there's a car, like, cars parked along it. You know, if you're, like, getting out of the way of, like, someone else walking in, like, the opposite direction, or you're walking past someone. Like, that's it. Like, that's the exception, as far as I'm concerned. Or you're just, like, fucking around. You're allowed to just randomly fuck. Just don't do it all the time. Don't fuck around all the time or in the same place. But, you know, randomly fucking around with your friends and shit like that. You know? They say, like when you're younger, right? You know, there's a tree on someone's yard. You go hide behind it. Right? And your friends wonder where the hell you went. Some shit like that, right? It's like, yeah, kids will be kids, right? That's fucking whatever. But anyways, so that's kind of what we've been doing, because we know, like, your sentence has a certain place in the paragraph, right? That's why the first thing we go through is we fix all the sentences, and the second thing we go through is we go through and we fix all the paragraphs. Once we have all the sentences and all the paragraphs set, then it's just a grammar issue, right? And we don't give a fuck about grammar, because I'm gonna, like, basically, like, it's reading presentation, at least at this point, right? Because I'm basically just posting them on my Google Docs if people want to read them, and then I'm just, like, reading them for YouTube videos, right? So the grammar doesn't necessarily matter, because it's how I'm going to be reading it, and, like, I know how I want to read it, right?
Before was so you can figure out what the next note should be. Now, if you want a hilariously bad example of sentences not realizing what the previous sentence was, I got one for you. This is from Gary Provost. This sentence has 5 words. Here are 5 more words. 5-word sentences are fine, but several together become monotonous. Listen to what is happening. The writing is getting boring. The sound of it drones. It's like a stuck record. The ear demands some variety. That is a perfect encapsulation of why you need more sentence variety. So from that little passage, what is it demanding? It's demanding a long sentence. A long sentence to break up that rat-a-tat rhythm and give us some variety, some musical flow. So here are 3 quick ways to create a little bit more variety. One that we've kind of already touched on already is length. You want to alternate short with medium with long. 2 is structure. You want to start your sentences in different ways. You don't want them all to be SVO, meaning subject, verb, object. He did this. So look at this example from The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Today, despite Rita's closed face and pressed lips, I would like to stay here in the kitchen. That little word, that little today at the beginning. If you have a little word followed by a comma at the beginning of your sentence and contrasts well with the structure of your other sentences. Another structure strategy is to start with a dependent clause. This one is from Cormac McCarthy's The Road. When he got back, that's not a finished sentence, right? That's the dependent clause right there. The boy was still asleep. And the third idea to create variety is rhythm. Look at this 3-part sentence in Karen Russell's Swamplandia. We'd stare at the sun, grip
I missed that one.
Right there. The boy was still asleep. And the third back strategy is rhythm. Look at this 3-part sentence in Karen Russell's Swamplandia. We'd stare at the sun, grip the grass, hold on to each other in the dark. It really flows off the tongue. It's such a beautifully constructed sentence. So the sentence before it probably shouldn't have a 3-part rhythm, and neither should the sentence after it. Now, I do my best when creating these YouTube videos to make them as concise and as helpful as possible, but obviously I can't fit all of my knowledge into a YouTube video. So if you do want more about sentence variety and everything else I know about sentences, check out my course, How to Write a Splendid Sentence. Link in the comments below for that. The second step in constructing a sentence is cherry pick the verb. A lot of writers pick a verb sort of instinctually, almost like the way AI would do it, right? They're just predicting what is the verb that normally goes in this space. But I say cherry pick for a very specific reason. The idea of cherry picking is you're looking over a number of verbs that you could choose.
Yeah. People tend to think, like there's, like, a taboo to the word cherry picking. When someone, it's like a Pavlovian response. When you say cherry picking, people are, you know, it evokes a certain response from people. But it's like, I feel like most people get the wrong type of response. It's like, you have a tree, that tree has things on it, right? And you're looking at those things to see which ones are good and which ones are bad. What's wrong with that? A lot of people would have a negative connotation towards cherry picking. But it's all how you use it. It's just the way that it's used in, like, for instance, media. where it's cherry pick the rotten shit to make a super dramatic story. It's cherry picking, but it's not the right way to pick cherries. Or, I mean, I guess if you were like grinding them up in some way, you know, you wouldn't necessarily. You could have like bird picked ones and ones that are broken open. But if you're like selling them to people, you want cherries that look like real nice, right? So it's like, depending upon what you want, you're still cherry picking whether you're getting the good ones or you're getting the bad ones, right? Insane, Callie. I am ready. It's my weekend. We can go all night.
Choose between, and you're being like, that one looks nice. Yes, please. I'm trying to get you to focus more on verb selection because verbs are the little despots of the sentence. They're these little authoritarian rulers that control everything that's going on around them. If you spend a little bit more time picking your verbs deliberately, it's going to pay these outsized dividends in improving your sentences. Here's a few great examples to inspire you. Toni Morrison
talks
writes
from
about
Eggy.
heavy...
Hey man, I don't believe in polygamy. I mean, wait, what? I believe it. I believe in polygamy? Shit, I got this backwards, right? Yeah, I don't believe in monogamy. Necessarily. I don't believe... Okay, I don't believe in forced monogamy. Doug isn't mine, he's community property. Exactly, Eggy. Exactly. That's just the kind of person I am. You know? You build it, I will come, you know? But, you know, you will, because it's like, you know, you just got to make the hole. That's what I'm saying. You just got to make the hole, I'll show up. You know? But, the way that you, like, how do you say this? Like, look at the differences between... I'm eating bread with peanut butter and couldn't get 2 slices because we only have 2.5. Damn. Stole that from the Steel Panther song. My heart belongs to you, but my dick is community property. Oh, that's great. I love it. But yeah, that's just how, like, I present myself, and it's like, like, there's nothing wrong with monogamy. It's forced monogamy when you're a person who doesn't care about that, right? Like, I'm the type of person that, like, I would love to have, like, 4 wives and 6 husbands. I think that'd be amazing. Just they could have their own harem with us, you know? I think that'd be a good time. But that's just me, right? So you just find like-minded people, right? Consenting of age, I don't think the government should get involved. Anything other than that, the government should get fucking involved.
Sunflowers weeping over fences. I love that verb, weeping.
Now, do I have ADHD? I guess this will be like a hot take, but like I don't think ADHD is like okay, hold on. I think there's real ADHD. But I think there's also, like, learned ADHD. And I think learned ADHD comes from boredom. And an inability... It's like boredom and decision paralysis. ADHD. You're like all over the place. You don't know how to choose anything. But you have to do something, so you're always jumping around between different things, right? But it's like, I think that's completely different than, like, someone who's actually, like, ADHD and, like, literally, like, has a shake or something like that. Like, they can't stand still. Not necessarily I think that's, like, more of an amped presence of mind. Like, they just, like... yeah, exactly. Like, thinks you can cure autism with electroshocks. Eggy, I'm not saying it, but, you know, some people, we watched the clip from South Park, you know, how you solve ADHD. Shut up and read! Strike fear into him. Catholic nun does the trick. Yup, true. You ain't getting past that shit. No dog ate my fucking homework. You better fucking hope your dog didn't eat your homework, bitch.
What's a verb you could have put in there, right? You could have put in there bending, right? Heavy sunflowers bending their way over fences. But it includes this contradiction between, you think of sunflowers being happy and yet weeping makes them seem sad. But it implies that they are bending without actually saying the word bending. It's doing a lot of work, that verb. Here's one from Dracula by Bram Stoker. The fog slithered in from the sea. What's a verb you would normally put in there? The fog drifted in from the sea or crept in from the sea. There's nothing wrong with those verbs, but you get...
See, this, it's actually funny that he's saying this, because literally this is what I do. I'll take the noun, I'll take the verb, I'll take the adjective, and I will say, what is a poetic subtext word that I can use to replace the actual word that evokes more meaning and more purpose and more depth? And I try to do that all the time. I'm just at a lack for a vocabulary. Like, this is what my vocabulary looks like. This is what I wish my vocabulary was. So, yeah. If your dog ate your homework, you're going to do twice as much for half the grade to make up for it. Surely in a Catholic school, it's God ate your homework. Emotion, too. Yeah, exactly, Sean. And it's all about knowing when you can do that and still have, like, you know, the effect. Because the rest of the sentence will mold what you're trying to say around that verb. So I actually do this. I just never thought about it this way. Oh, I write the same essay twice because Microsoft Word didn't have autosave. Oh, shit, Callie. That's never good.
This sense of foreboding and this snake-like connotation from the word slithered. It makes the scene creepier, doesn't it? And here's an example from Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Memories scuttled like roaches when the light snapped on. Scuttled is such a fun verb right there, right? If you were writing the sentence, maybe you would have picked something a little bit simpler, something like scattered or something. But scuttled gives this very peculiar flavor to that sentence. Now, I think there are two mistakes when it comes to verbs. One, don't try to get too fancy. Don't try to pull out stuff like
let him scuttling!
Just say give, and don't say remunerate when you really mean pay. Or use fancy pants language like transpire when you really mean happen. Weeping, slithered, and scuttled are not like $10 words that you can only find in the dictionary. They're
kind of agree. It seems a bit coincidental that ADHD cases have risen in perfect sync with constant access to all knowledge and every media ever created in your pocket. Acquiesce is also fine too. Indeed. But it's like, I try to use that kind of language. Like, I try to save that kind of language for dialogue, because you can pick certain word choices. Like, I guess a good way to describe this is if you have, like, you know, let's say a group of like 30 verbs, 30 nouns, and 30 adjectives, and you circle 3 groups of 10. And for when those characters talk, you substitute what you would normally say with those. And then that's like my cheat code for giving a character voice. I don't know how accurate that is to actually doing something, but like that's always been like, that's the process I naturally came to while developing characters and imagining how characters think and how characters talk. So it's kind of like the same thing with like every kind of reaction, you know? But it's like the problem with it is they're not categorized. If they were categorized within like concentric circles of each other to be like, oh, these all link to this and this core reason is the reason why you choose all of this. Like for instance with Varius and Gluttony, they speak very much alike because they use very Shakespearean language in their talking. And only when they're very serious or it's a very important thing that they're trying to get across, they will use proper language. but they go above and beyond, and with the ability of a bard to be able to know what you're trying to say, that fucks with the intent of being able to, like, not having language, right? So it's like, I've even thought of the nuances of people being like, well then, if it's intent, then how do you know? Well, it's because they intend to use poetic words instead of basic words. And that intention goes to the person, and the person then hears those choiced vocabulary words. So it works exactly within the construct of how consciousness would transmit language through intent. Because you are intending this specific speech pattern, which is proven by the fact that at serious times, when you need to, you ditch that speech pattern and go back to talking normally because you don't have the time and effort to put into your speech. And he's a character that won't speak without thinking. And when he speaks without thinking, it's an emergency, and it's a very different speech pattern. And I kind of want to imprint that with these characters, right? That they are essentially faking being this poetic, and that's an aspect of their personalities because they're bards. And it's not like, oh, they're bards, so everyone hears their language in a poetic way. No, that's not how it works. Way more nuanced than that. Which is like how much I've thought about how communication works.
Like kind of average words, what makes them great is the different contexts that they're used in. We don't normally think of fog slithering. We don't normally think of sunflowers weeping. If you take a normal word and put it in an unusual context, that elevates the verb and it elevates the sentence. And the second mistake is just to try to avoid plain Jane verbs, right? These are the common everyday verbs. They're the first verbs that you think of when you
This institution
write
is
this.
disinclined to acquiesce to your request as the remuneration is insufficient to facilitate the transactional labor to transpire.
True, Sean. Now, if that was like, you know what this would perfectly be for? This would be beautiful for, like, in Cryogen. Like how the AI on, like, his newest ship or whatever, or, like, the AI in, like, the HUD and on, like, the government ship and stuff like that.
Brain literally going burr.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Sean. I love that kind of language because that plays into like the whole concept of how language is structured, right? And it's like it's gotten to such a point that you have to use these exact specific terms that only mean a single thing, so it can't be misinterpreted because people purposefully misinterpret the AI to do other... Oh, you said this. Well, in this context. No, not in this context. You said this. So it's like... I like the idea of using that in order to facilitate the inability to misunderstand. If you actually understand the language being used, right? It's like using legal language or like government language, right? I love that kind of idea.
Sentence. This is stuff like passive verbs, right? Like it's just not very exciting. Pick strong, active verbs that really light up your sentence. So if you want to see some more great verbs, I would recommend checking out my article on the...
I'd say like a good one would be like... Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh man, my head just goes straight into the gutter. But, you know, for like when they're cleaning his teeth and stuff, like his face like vibrating, right? From like the drill, and like kind of being like you know, they kind of like push and then you kind of like push back kind of thing, and you kind of have that like tiny little struggle where they're like moving your head around to get in like different angles and stuff like that. I don't know, I just instantly think that as a powerful word. Is that a powerful word? I relate to translation being broke. I can't afford food. The bite block too. Yeah. But like I said, my vocabulary in general, like on scope and scale, is tiny. I need to expand it.
100 most beautiful sentences ever written. Oh, there are some doozies in there. You're gonna love it. They're beautiful overall, but they also include some really beautiful verbs. On that page, you can also sign up for my email list, which only covers how to write sentences. It's a fascinating series of emails. You'll love it. Once again, link in the description below. The third step to writing a dynamite sentence is to pick a power word. So when I was doing graduate studies at USC, I studied with Janet Fitch, who's probably best known for her novel
When they have to do work on your molars and they shove that wedge of rubber into your mouth and painfully force your jaw wider than it normally would open.
Power word kill.
True. On both accounts.
White Oleander. Great teacher. I learned so much from her, and this is a tip I got from her. She recommended that every single sentence that you write have one power word. Basically, a word that elevates that sentence from being a mere conveyor belt of information.
Decimate is a powerful word. I'd say my go-to is majestic. What do you guys think of majestic?
Into something a little more unusual.
Sean sharing an excerpt from the Atox biography he's writing. When
Usual and surprising. So let's look at some examples of that. This is a sentence from James Salter. She had a rich, naked laugh. Now, what do you think the power word is there? I would say it's naked, right? I don't think of laughs as being naked. But what I love about that word is it describes something about the laugh, which is very
obviously, Eggy. Obviously, it's not a dentist strip. It's a bukake. I mean, at the end of the day, it's gonna wind up being a bukake.
unguarded. She doesn't care who hears her laugh, right? It's completely unself-conscious. Here's an example from Marilyn Robinson's Gilead. I am grateful for all those dark years, even though in retrospect, they seem like a long, bitter prayer. Now, what do you think the power word is there? I would argue that it's bitter. I love how bitter and prayer are fighting with each other a little bit. Like, you don't normally think of prayer as being a really bitter thing, and that's why it's really surprising. And then here's a sentence from Flann O'Brien.
Why my brain not understand anything? Are you not understanding this, Callie? Okay, let's see. Let's see if we can pick out the power word in the next sentence before he gives it to us. Eviscerate is great also. The poor bastard wasn't just cut, he was eviscerated. No more than 3 centimeters of flesh in any direction was connected to another. No, the bukkake? Majestic makes me think of nature, specifically lions. That's an interesting thought, Eggy, because I think of whales. Whales and dolphins. And, like, orcas, like sea creatures. I just think they're fucking majestic. And it's also, like, the scenery around it, too, right? Like, imagining looking down from, like, a helicopter or a plane or something over open ocean where you can see, like, the shadow of, like, a blue whale under the water or something like that. It's just the entire sight of it, the sun sparkling over the waves of the water, like, the whole thing, just it's just fucking majestic. But yeah, it does have a very nature tone to it, and that's what I love about it.
The road ran away westwards in the mist of the early morning, running cunningly through the little hills. What do you
So what do you guys think is the power word? Cunningly.
What do you think the power word is in that sentence? I think it's cunningly. Cunningly is great because one, it's mirroring the word before it. They both have that U-N-N-I-N-G, but I also like this personification of the road. It's not just a road which is sitting there. It is deliberately taking action. It is running cunningly. Like you get a sense of these twists and turns of the road. Now, I am not telling you to use like a synonym to try to find like crazy words out there. I think it's best when it usually happens organically. And
I feel like you're describing the sublime without the element of existential dread. The fact that you can spell that word, Callie, implies you are quite familiar with the concept. Wait, what? Oh, the spell bukkake! Because he spelled it correctly. That is a poorly written sentence, because run and running makes me feel like the writer is lazy. The road ran away westward in the mist of the early morning. Yeah, maybe I would replace, like, I instantly think replacing running with cutting. To not have ran twice. Or, like, the road projected westwards. Or, but I guess it's like away, I don't know. But yeah, I'd either replace the ran or I'd replace the running. Or jaunting. Jaunting cunningly through the little hills. Cutting cunningly might pull away from the strength of cunningly. See, I was thinking the same thing with jaunting. So yeah, maybe remove ran. The road faced westwards in the mist of the early morning. The road went westwards in the mist of the early morning, running cunningly through the little hills. Yeah. I think it's the change of tense makes it weird. Yeah, I agree. This is one thing that I tried to, like, I'm really bad at doing. And I try, like, in the editing to get rid of this, where you have two different tenses in the same thing. So I think taking away ran and, like, with went, but we need, like, a different trailed. Trailing away westward in the mist of the early morning, the road ran cunningly through the little hills. Does that work? Or is that a worse sentence? Because it's not focusing on the road, and maybe it's just in context, it's supposed to, like, the road is important. Sounds better to me, at least. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to pick and choose, right? But, yeah, I would definitely say that is one way to get rid of the tense. But anyways.
The early morning, running cunningly through the little hills. What do you think the power word is in that sentence?
Slithering ties it to cunning and the movement word of running. Arrogantly insist instead of cunningly implies that the road cared not for being noticed. Trailed westward to avoid two words, starting off with W if you needed. That's, Yeah. Interesting.
I think it's cunningly. Cunningly is great because one, it's mirroring the word before it. They both have that UNNING, but I also like this personification of the road. It's not just a road which is sitting there. It is deliberately taking action. It is running cunningly. Like you get a sense of these twists and turns of the road. Now, I am not telling you to use like a synonym to try to find like crazy words out there. I think it's best when it usually happens organically. And I'm also not telling you to choose complex words. If you look at these words, naked, bitter, cunningly, I mean, they're not super complex or super esoteric words. And I should also say, like, if there is a sentence you really, really love and you've always like stared at it and loved it and put it up on a pedestal on your bookshelf, then I want to hear about it. Please leave it in the comments below so we can have this like repository of amazing sentences. And here is step number 4 to write a killer sentence: create a story arc. The purpose of this step is to get you to think about sentences as being mini stories. In other words, you should think about your sentences transporting you from the beginning of the sentence, and you should end up in a different place by the end of the sentence. The beginning of the sentence is basically setting up expectations that by the end you want to invert or subvert or fulfill in some way. And I absolutely love this example from Michel Houellebecq. It's just a gem of a sentence. It's from his book, The Elementary Particles. He was still a handsome man with a tanned, chiseled face and long, thick, wavy white hair, but his cells had begun to reproduce in a haphazard fashion, destroying the DNA of neighboring cells and secreting toxins into his body. Did I not warn you that was gonna...
Micro stories to make the story, short story to make the full story to make the series. Yes. True, Sean.
Be an incredible sentence. Okay, so we have the first half of the sentence. We think, oh, it's just like a description of a guy. No big deal. We see his face, we see his hair, like this is really like normal run-of-the-mill stuff.
And then boom,
the cancer part of the sentence takes over. But it doesn't just say like, oh, by the way, he has cancer. It describes it in a very scientific manner, like cells reproducing in haphazard fashion, DNA getting messed up. So the beginning of that sentence is a guy who's an everyday Joe, right? Nothing remarkable about him. By the end of the sentence, we have a man dying from cancer. This next example is from Yaa Gyasi's book, Transcendent Kingdom. When I first started studying the neutral circuits of reward-seeking behavior in mice, I didn't believe they could feel fear, but I would come to understand that they could feel everything: fear, relief, joy, desire, disgust, all of it running like current through their tiny mouse bodies, just the same as it runs through mine. At the beginning of this sentence, we have a scientist doing experiments on mice. There is a clear gap between the woman and the creature. But by the end of the sentence, by that very surprising last phrase, we realize that there's a lot that they have in common. That's a journey. That sentence takes readers on a journey. Now, I have to say that not every sentence is going to do this. You shouldn't feel the pressure of trying to make every sentence do this, but I do think it's a very helpful way to think about how to make sure your sentence is pulling its weight and really captivating the reader, is making something change, making the story arc happen. The fifth step in writing a knockdown sentence is choose your figure of speech. Now, no, not every sentence needs a figure of speech, but a lot of beautiful, great sentences do include some kind of figure of speech. So I don't want to talk about metaphor and simile because you guys are smart, right? You already know what those are. So let's skip over that
smart,
and get to some more
guys.
complex,
Yay!
more surprising ones. Let's look at metonymy, which is basically when one word is substituted for another word. Here's an example from The Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas. He shall think differently, the musketeer threatened, when he feels the point of my steel. So instead of saying the word sword, right? Instead, he substitutes it for something that represents the word sword, steel. That's metonymy, folks. You probably use it and haven't even realized you've used it. And here is an example of synecdoche from John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. You know how the hands are. They just come in and get their bunk and work a month. So the synecdoche in that sentence is hands. And what it is just when you substitute a part for the whole, right? Now, he just says hands, but he doesn't actually mean like an actual physical hands. I don't know what that was. He means like a hand as a symbol of, you know, a person, a whole person working on the farm. The most important part of that person are their hands, right? That's how they do all their farm work. And so that is a word that substitutes for the whole. Here are two figures of speech which are super important and that you need to use like actually quite frequently: anaphora and epistrophe. And these are opposites.
Okay. Gotta slow this one down just a second. All the vocabulary I don't know. I'm fairly sure hands is just short for work hands. But what's work hands short for, Eggy? A person. So you got to go even further back and look at the root of the root of the root. Watching videos like this and not understanding a single word of it makes me realize why they tried to put me in special ed when I was younger. Jesus, welcome, welcome. No, I know these words exist, but I just, they're words that I don't have full understanding of, right? And again, that's what I want. I want this type of vocabulary. I want verb, noun, adjective, metaphor, simile for something in editing, right? Which would be like line editing, copy editing, event structure, scene thing, or like sentence structure, sentence, I guess you call it like movement, right? Adverb too, yep.
Anaphora is when you repeat a word at the beginning of a phrase. And I love this example from Karen Russell's Swamplandia. Our mother performed the roadshow Gator Warrior act in front of 2,000 people, 5 days a week, 4 times a day. And afterwards, she showed me how to do it too. How to hold your breath and rise from the lake like a goddess. How to hold very still in the cage. How to smile in such a way that your smile tells people they are lucky to be watching you die. So there's actually 2 examples of anaphora in that. One is a near example of anaphora. We have numbers at the beginning. 2,000 people, 5 days a week, 4 times a day. That's not exactly anaphoric because it's not exactly the same word, but it's close. And then the second half of the sentence has actual anaphora. How to hold your breath. How to hold very still. How to smile in such a way. An epistrophe is the opposite, where you end each part of the sentence with a similar word. Here's an example from the Wasp Eater. At the bottom of everything, they were a family of silence. Nothing but blind, black, coal-crumbling silence. His father never anchored or steady like his mother never sanguine or loose like his father. So I love that repetition of the word silence at the end of those initial 2 phrases. It really creates this sort of music, this sort of rhythm, the repetition of the word. Another figure of speech you should be using in your sentences is antithesis. Here's an example from Cormac McCarthy's The Road. You forget what you want to remember, and you remember what you want to forget. It's such a neat parallelism, and it's just flipped over a little bit, right? The 2 halves of the sentence are mirrors of one another. I'd also encourage you to use hyperbole and litotes, which I always want to read as litotes, but that's not how you say it. These are also opposites. Here's an example of hyperbole from Gabriel Garcia Marquez. At that time, Bogota was a remote, lugubrious city where an insomniac rain had been falling since the beginning of the 16th century. So the rain wasn't really falling continually since the 16th century, right? I mean, that's clearly an exaggeration.
Towering is the only adverb I can think of. I don't know what anything is, Sean. I literally don't know. I'm retarded.
But I love how it sets the tone and the mood of this story. Like, it feels in the city like a rain has been falling for 4 centuries. And here's an example of the litotes from...
Adverbs are adjectives for verbs. Like, quickly. This is why Levi's here, man. Levi's our structured vocabulary dude. He's got the knowledge, man. He's keeping us on our toes.
The classic Beowulf. The sword wasn't useless to the warrior. Well, duh, the sword just killed Grendel. I'd say it's actually pretty dang useful. But that figure of speech of underplaying something, which is the opposite of hyperbole, works really well sometimes. And the last figure of speech you should be using is repetition. It is very difficult to retrain our brains, which have been lectured to by high school English teachers saying, oh, don't repeat things. Well,
adjective describes something, verb is an action, thus an adverb is a describing action. Oh, don't take me back to school, guys.
well, I mean, don't be redundant, but redundancy is different than repetition. Repetition can be really beautiful. I mean, music is founded on repetition. Here's a great example of repetition from Anne Patchett's The Patron Saint of Liars. So I said yes to Thomas Clinton, and later thought I had said yes to God, and later still realized I had said yes only to Thomas Clinton. I said yes, I said yes, I said yes. But the story also takes us on a journey. She thought she was saying yes to a boy, and then thinks, oh no, I was just following God's commands and then realized, no, I was just going after a boy. I actually have a post on BookFox, which is all about using repetition in sentences and how to do it well.
I was the first one to count 100 in my class. I
also put a link
back
to that in the
then,
description below.
and it was all downhill after that. True
A brilliant
visas.
sentence is cut the fat. Now, I had initially written that as cut away the fat, and then I decided, what if I do what I'm telling other people to do and kill the away? And I think cut the fat is just nice and direct, so I'll stick with that. So what are things that you can cut away in a sentence so that what remains is highlighted? One, always have a keen eye for adjectives and adverbs. Sometimes you can pile up too many in a sentence and it ends up cluttering the prose rather than illuminating what you should concentrate on, which is primarily nouns and verbs. Those are the engines of a sentence. That's what powers sentences. The second thing you should cut is prepositional phrases, particularly if you have, say, 3 or 4 in a row. It's just way too much. In my bed, under the covers, with my pillow was a sword. The in and the under and the with, that's 3 in a row prepositional phrases. It's usually not the best technique unless you're really trying to go for some sort of like prepositional phrase pile up. The third step in trying to cut the fat is just to trim unnecessary words.
Don't change chewing the fatty pieces to chewing the fat, though, because it has a different meaning. Cut the fat like an obese emo.
They collaborated together on the project. Well, could they collaborate alone? I think not. So cut that together, man, right? They collaborated on the project. Simpler, more direct. That's how you want to do it. And the very last step in cutting the fat is don't be afraid of short sentences. Like
I love short sentences.
Fear. I see a lot of
I
authors,
love them.
they are never having like a 3-word sentence in their
Or a
book. And that's
one-word
shame.
sentence.
Like if you don't have a 3-word sentence in your book, there's a problem with your book. You should have at least one. And if you don't believe me, hey, watch my video on short sentences. Hopefully that will convince you of the absolute genius of writing extremely short sentences.
Well, we got a React for tomorrow, boys, or some other time, but we're just gonna save this.